Thanks for tuning in to another episode of From Funding to Fame, where we interview the founders and funders currently raising capital on FrontFundr, as well as experts in the private capital markets. I'm your host, Trieste Redding, the head of campaigns at FrontFundr, and I'm excited to introduce more Canadians to equity crowdfunding. This podcast episode features conversations about a business's current operations and future plans, and as a result may contain forward-looking information. There can be no assurance that forward-looking information will prove to be accurate, as actual results and future events could differ materially from those anticipated in such statements. Listeners should not place undue reliance on forward-looking information. Today we're here with the co-founders of Blossom Social, the CEO Maxwell Nicholson and the CMO Brandon Beavis. Blossom Social is a trailblazing finance company based in Vancouver, Canada that has embarked on a mission to democratize investing. With a community of over 100,000 investors sharing their verified stock portfolios, trades, and investment ideas, Blossom is quickly becoming the go-to purpose-built app for investors. Blossom's campaign was also record-breaking on FrontFundr. They had the biggest launch day ever on the platform with over $500,000 raised from 450 investors within 24 hours, and they were the quickest campaign to successfully launch and close their round at just 3.5 days. Truly incredible numbers. Hi, Maxwell, Brandon. Thank you so much for being here today. Welcome to From Funding to Fame. How are you both doing?
Awesome.
Thumbs up. I'm doing good over here.
That's fantastic. Normally, we conduct these interviews during an active investment opportunity on the platform, but your raise was record-breaking and you filled the round in only 3.5 days, which is incredible. So while we have you on the episode today, we'd love to give the audience a chance to learn more about Blossom as well as to talk about your historic campaign. So just as we look to kick things off, I think it'd be great to learn a little bit more about you both. Maxwell, I know you're a McKinsey alum, and Brandon, you're a financial influencer. So would love to hear kind of what your career journeys have looked like so far. Maxwell, perhaps we can start with you and then turn it over to Brandon.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I can kick it off. I got started in entrepreneurship at the age of 13. I started my first business, Alethea Cakes, selling cakes and cupcakes at the local farmers market in my small town of Grand Forks, BC. Less than 10,000 folks living there in the middle of the Kootenays. So anyway, that was my first foray into business and entrepreneurship. I became known as the Cupcake Kid, did that for 4 years and saved up for college. Went off to business school at the University of Victoria. And then, as you mentioned, Trieste, worked at McKinsey, which is a management consulting firm where I specialized in fintech and digital marketing and digital business building. Got to travel all across the world, everywhere from Puerto Rico to Boston to Toronto, San Diego, clients everywhere. And so it was a really cool opportunity. But then in 2021, we really saw the opportunity with the emergence of Reddit and the whole GameStop fiasco and everything. The power of social media in getting folks to be interested in starting investing. But we saw, with that also came a lot of reckless trading, a lot of poor financial decisions. And so we sort of asked, can we take the really powerful social force, which is driving people into investing, and turn that into a force for good by building a social platform that actually helps people become better investors together. So that's a little bit about my journey and how it led us to Blossom. And Brandon, our fearless CMO, joined soon after that. So I'll pass it over to him to share his story as well.
Yeah, my story is not as exciting as yours, Max. Definitely didn't do as much traveling, but yeah, my background is in finance. So I actually worked with my father for a number of years. I became an investment advisor when I was 20, which is, I guess, a relatively young age. You don't see as many young. I think it's becoming more popular now, but certainly not too many of my friends were in the investing scene that early on. But I got some good work experience there. And I ended up starting a YouTube channel. That was kind of my big thing. I was one of the first. In fact, I was the first real Canadian-focused investing YouTube channel. Just took a bunch of the information I was learning from my daily life, working at my father's firm, and creating video content. And yeah, that's been going on I guess seven years ago now. So time really does fly, but that worked out pretty well, caught a pretty good wave. Kind of jumped on the social media trend early, if you will, because this was back in 2016, 2017, and grew our following to about 200,000 or so subscribers. So a decent following, made a ton of good connections. And then when I came across Max, who we actually met at a buddy's place, so we were having beers one night, just as a little get together, we immediately hit it off. And I heard about what they were doing. I said, hey, this is something I want to be a part of. And then obviously just leverage my following and connections to help grow the app.
That's amazing. Love hearing more about both your backgrounds, Maxwell. I had no idea you came from such a small town in BC, and I always love to hear those who start entrepreneurship so young. I think that's amazing. And Brandon, to your point as well, I think getting into a financial advisor kind of position at that age is definitely relatively rare. So great opportunity to dive in early on and really, yeah, grow those insights and learnings over time. So yeah, happy to hear more of it. You guys are definitely a great team there. And Maxwell, you touched on briefly kind of that moment of inspiration. You guys saw the uptick in public trading and investing during the pandemic, but of course, a lot of it was not necessarily well researched or maybe the best decisions that people could have made, and how kind of a culmination of factors led to that aha moment for Blossom Social. Maybe you can walk us through kind of what those early days of the startup were like, and what it was like really getting this off the ground. I know you've had exceptional growth numbers over the last year, but what were those early days of building the platform and the app and gaining customers like?
Yeah, that's a good question, Trias. And it's funny, I'm not a huge believer in like the aha moment. Like, in fact, I'm a big believer in, you find a general problem that you want to solve, which I guess is related to the insight that we had early on. But then it's really around, launching fast, failing fast, testing, iterating, and continuing on that, random walk until you find something that works, and ultimately, find product market fit, which I feel we've achieved in the last year here. And that iteration, I remember our very early product, we didn't have the broker linking. So for context, because I guess we haven't talked about it yet, Blossom, as I mentioned, social app for investors. If you think of LinkedIn as the social app for career and jobs, we're building the social app for everything money, finance, investing. We connect to a user's brokerage account and allow them to share their profile, which is their portfolio, and see what other people are investing in, see what other people are trading. And it's sort of Reddit and Reddit/Twitter style feed. But on top of that, we have so many more features like dividend tracking, portfolio analysis. We have a whole like Duolingo style portal for investors, a lot of rich feature set. But the very first V1 was you could essentially manually add your positions in basically like a spreadsheet, and then it would like show a little pie chart, and you could see what other people's pie charts. I don't even think we had like posting or commenting or anything. We just launched GIFs and images in the comments recently. We certainly didn't have that. And yeah, I mean, the evolution over the last 2.5 years has just been every 2 weeks. So we put an update, iteration, and it compounds. And the app is where it is today because of all that hard work from our incredible tech team. But it wasn't just one big launch. It was every week, every weekend, putting in that effort. And I think the same can be true as well for the growth side. I mean, we've had that big uptick. We've 10x'd in the last year from about 10,000 to over 125,000 now. But that also is just that consistent growth of our ambassador program, iterating on our ad strategy, building in more features which drive virality, and continuing to see that compounding effect there. So I think that there is really no one aha moment. It's 2.5, 3 years of consistent hard work, iteration, and testing. And I think any of the entrepreneurs listening will know exactly what I'm talking about there. So yeah.
No, absolutely. I think that's great. Definitely, I myself have downloaded and am a user of the app. Personally, I love it. I'm amazed I didn't come across it sooner. What you guys do is great. There's fantastic engagement tools. And Maxwell, I know as part of the pitch, you've highlighted the fact that you haven't just grown the community and kind of the number of downloads, but you actually have developed really great retention off of that. So would love to hear a little bit more about that value proposition that you're providing to those investors that's getting them to stick around and continue enjoying and engaging with the app.
Yeah, I mean, I think the core value prop that we bring is really community, right? Like, investing for many, many years has been a very lonely journey. And it's also very, daunting for folks to get started in, and Brandon can speak more to that. But when people get into it, that, you know, they have so many questions. What do I do? You know, where do I invest? TFSA, RRSP, so many buzzwords. And so I think having a inclusive and accessible community that people can come to and safely ask questions and learn from one another, see what other people are doing, has definitely been the biggest value prop. A lot of the other pieces around tracking and the Duolingo style education, all of those are more supplemental and bonus features on top of sort of that core, you know, value prop which we've built, which isn't even like a feature or a product. It's more so just the community that we've fostered. But Brandon, I'll let you add to that, because I know you've seen that, especially that journey that a you know, a new investor goes through.
Yeah, no, I just echo what you said there, really. Many people don't have those friends, those families. And I guess more or less like the current solutions where people do end up going, we feel they're flawed, right? So for example, people go into the Wall Street bets, they're going to the Twitter, and then you're just met with all these anonymous users. And, you know, nowadays things like scams and people just trying to take advantage of you. You know, that's something that from the ground up, we were able to essentially like, you know, build the polar opposite of that. And it's, you know, community, we always say, is this kind of catch-all term, you know, community, but it's something that we've like truly been able to crack. And I think very uniquely, like if you think about, you know, the more and more you get to meet Max and then the team, you know, the Blossom team itself, these are just values that we live by, right? Being inclusive, making sure we're caring for everyone. I mean, people will say that, but it is true. That does like trickle down into the app. From the ambassadors we work with, the influencers, we're very, very selective. You know, we could be growing a lot faster had we just picked any, you know, influencer to work with, but we know how that can trickle down and impact our community. So with the right targeting and the right approach, like it really has become just the foundation and the uniqueness about Blossom is that it's a place where people can come connect transparently. It's just a very refreshing experience for investors, whereas a lot of the current social medias or other places they go are actually the polar opposite of that.
Yeah. And I guess just building on that slightly, like I mentioned briefly our mission, which is, you know, helping people make better financial decisions, right? And if you think of Wall Street Bets, I'd say Wall Street Bets doesn't do that. In fact, it probably drives people to make worse financial decisions. And we
Terrible.
really do live by that. In fact, yeah, one of our core concerns when we were first chatting with you guys with FrontFundr was, you know, making sure our community understood the nature of the investment that they were making when they're investing in a private company. And so in our pitch video, I think we spend almost like a quarter of the pitch video telling people why they shouldn't invest in Blossom, because it's like it's not an investment opportunity for everyone. You know, there's no liquidity. It's a very long time horizon, and if someone's looking for like a 1 year or 2 year you know, return or liquidity, right, they shouldn't be investing in a private company. And so something like that, it's, you know, it's maybe counterproductive to spend so much time, or counterintuitive to spend so much time highlighting something like that. But that's where I think you know, a mission is only a true mission if it drives decisions that commercially are you know, might lower your revenue, but are actually, you know, living by your values. And so that's, you know, a small example of that in action.
No, I think that's great. I know transparency is definitely a core part of the mission for you guys. And you highlight, I think, in the video as well, the importance of kind of the portfolio being tagged to people's profiles so that you're not just making claims about, hey, I made X amount, you know, on this investment. You can actually get a truer picture of that. And I think for those early investors as well, a lot of people even often turn to, you know, their parents for financial advice. And sometimes that's not always the best place to go to either, depending on what financial decisions they've made. I know read a book one. I think it's either like the Money Blueprint or the Millionaire Blueprint or something like that. But it talks about how, you know, those immediately in your circle and your family can influence your financial decisions and not always in the best way. So it is important to go seek that other information. But where do you go to try and get, you know, honest, transparent information? And it's great that you guys are really curating an area to do that, which is so important for so many people to just get comfortable learning more and asking questions, right?
100%. Yeah, even building on that, Tree, as you mentioned family, but another thing that Brandon's talked about a lot on his channel is, even especially in Canada, like the financial advisory space in general is very broken, because a lot of the financial advisors that people go to are at the big banks, and they're essentially like glorified sales folks, right? If I remember going to, you know, my bank, back when I was young, I think, 21 or so, I had maybe 5K to invest. And they put me in this 5-year market linked GIC, which like caps your upside. And it's the worst possible product you could have put me in, right? Because I'm 22 years old. I have very long time horizon. And over a 5-year time period, it's quite unlikely that for the market to fall. So capping my upside, I think the S&P, I can't remember anyway, I got a quarter of what I would have, returned just by investing in the S&P 500, and not to mention the MERs and all these high, management fees that are on top of that. It's most people, they're incentivized to overcomplicate it, so that folks feel, intimidated, and they don't think they can learn it themselves. But with a community like ours, I think people see that it's not that scary, and they can really, not only make better decisions and that are going to benefit them, but also like feel empowered to, make the decisions themselves, and really understand what they're doing.
Absolutely. I had the exact same story with GICs at the bank around the same age. They kept pushing those products, and I'm like, no, I'm not going down that route. Like I did
Yeah.
it once, and I'm like, that's enough.
Yeah.
But I know you guys have quite a bit of reach within Canada now, and you recently expanded into the US and are continuing to grow there. Would love to hear a little bit more about kind of what plans you guys have for international, market opportunities, and really just what market opportunity you see existing for a solution like Blossom, which can help so many.
100%. Yeah. And I was going to say, for any video watchers, but you can see it now, like Brandon's watching his 2-year-old Ava.
I'm on daddy duty. She's not happy when she wakes up from naps.
Yeah. Brandon, do you want to take this one, or do you want me to answer?
Yeah, no, sure. I mean, I just think I caught the end of it, Trieste, but yeah, our huge priority this year, and beyond, but effective like January 1st, we did expand to the US. So after essentially like proving the concept in Canada, which I think we did an exceptional job of, we said, hey, can we replicate this in a 10 times bigger? Maybe Max, I'll
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, for any of the podcast listeners who have families, you'll understand what's going on. But you can't see, but Brandon's daughter Ava is the cutest. But yeah, to answer tail end of what Brandon was saying, all our traction, 100,000, almost 1 million in revenue, has largely been in Canada. So with this raise and with this new capital, essentially what we're doing is taking the playbook that's worked so well in Canada and bringing it to the US. And so far already, I think about 35% of our downloads so far this month are coming from the US, and we just launched in January. So we've really been scaling that piece up. We've been working with some of the largest US creators who we're expanding, the ambassador program. We have many ambassadors in Canada who we've worked with. And so it's really, simple as if we achieve this level of penetration in Canada, can we do the same and replicate that model down south? And we're really optimistic that we can.
Absolutely. Now, one thing I wanted to touch on as well, we've obviously got a lot of listeners who could be interested in downloading the app, learning more about the features that you offer. And I know you've got your kind of freemium plan, but you also have the pro plan. And for entrepreneurs who might be listening as well, you guys have kind of courses and advertising opportunities. So perhaps you can kind of walk through the dual-sided business model that you guys have and what some of those features are for, each of those segments.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, if folks are interested in investing, definitely check out the app. We were one of Apple's essential finance apps this year. So if you trust Apple, give us a download. I mentioned sort of the 3 pillars, which is community, education, and portfolio analysis and tracking. So on the user side, those are the core value props. Our pro functionality, as you mentioned, Trieste, is really around deeper portfolio analysis, sector breakdowns, dividend tracking, everything to do with, managing and analyzing your portfolio better is sort of bundled in pro. And yeah, that's about 1/3 of our revenue, but the other 2/3 of our revenue actually comes from our brand partnerships. So we work with some of the largest ETF providers in Canada, including Bank of Montreal, Purpose Investments, Horizons, which is now Global X, Harvest ETFs, Middlefield, Guardian, many of the big names. But this is a big piece of what we'll be expanding as well. So whether you're, starting your round as well on FrontFundr, or whether you have a product that's potentially of interest to our community, definitely reach out, because we'll be expanding the advertising opportunities that will be available on the platform as we grow and continue to build the business for our almost 1,000 new shareholders.
That's awesome. I appreciate the overview there. I know you touched on a little bit kind of areas that you're hoping to expand and grow. You've had incredible traction numbers to date, so would love to hear a little bit more about what's ahead for Blossom. I know you guys do your product releases in 2-week sprints, which is amazing. So what's on that roadmap to help grow the business within the next coming quarters?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we talked about growth and we talked about revenue. Like we've been talking a lot about how chapter 1 is done. We found product market fit. We got to 100,000 users, $1 million in revenue. And the next step is 10xing that. So how do we get to 1 million users? How do we get to 10 million in revenue? We've talked about the growth strategy. We've talked about growing the brand partnerships and that side of the business. But yeah, on the product side, we have many, many more features in the roadmap. The biggest ones on the radar are direct messaging. So we want to build essentially a investing super chat in the app. If you think of WhatsApp, where you can add a photo, you can add a GIF, you hit the little plus button. There's all these different things you can add. Imagine you can do that, but you can add a stock chart, you can tag a trade, you can link to a position, right? And I think there's a lot of power that we can do, not just adding like direct messaging, which is a feature that users continually request, but taking that a step further and really building a unique messaging experience tailored for investors. Really excited about that. That's next on the docket. Desktop app is also a really big priority. Not everyone uses mobile, and especially for power users, when you're typing out long posts and for our creators, that desktop experience is really, really important. And then expanding the amount of assets that you can track on your portfolio. So we really want to be the social app for everything finance. So that includes whether it's real estate, whether it's crypto, cash products. For instance, I hold a lot of my assets just in Wealthsimple Cash, right? So being able to have that true holistic view of your entire portfolio.
Maybe even some venture investments.
Private equity, perhaps? That would be pretty
exactly.
cool.
Yeah. I don't know how I missed that one. Good call out, Brandon.
Oh, that's awesome. Appreciate you sharing more about kind of the road ahead. I know how busy you both are and how much work it was kind of, growing the company and managing the campaign at the same time. So we'd love to hear a little bit more about kind of your role as founders and leadership across the organization and how that drives growth and success. So yeah, would be interested to learn more about kind of your philosophies on leadership and how you bring that, commitment and inspiration and motivation to the team.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, like, one of my core philosophies around leadership is, like, a true leader should not be the final decision maker on everything. And so obviously sometimes you have a CEO and it's like everything needs to go through the CEO. But each of us on the founding team has their own unique division, which they're the decision maker on. So for myself, that's product. For Brandon, that's marketing and growth. For Anika, that's operations. For Kartik, that's everything technology. And so each of us, I think, in our own way, brings a very unique and an important skill set, to the table. And Brandon, you'll have seen, like, I'll sometimes disagree with you. I'll sometimes disagree with Kartik and or Anika, right? And for me, it's the important piece is, like, often I'll say, okay, I disagree with you, Brandon, but you're the decision maker, you're the expert in this area. And so I might voice my concern, but you're the ultimate decision maker. So I think that's a big piece. And even for the raise, it's very relevant, right? Because the raise was my core focus, but the rest of the business, except for product fell a bit behind, because that's the area I generally do. But yeah, no slowdown on the technology side, no slowdown on these other pieces. And I think as we're trying to scale the organization, especially in this next phase of, like, 10xing, that'll be really important, because I can't be the blocker for everything. And we can only truly, achieve that growth if we can expand the organization and the decision-making power at the same rate. And so that's one view I'd add. But Brandon, I don't know if you have anything to any of your thoughts on leadership there.
Well, no, I don't want to just come here and toot your horn, but I don't want people to understate, like, just how impressive of a leader Max is. I think especially in the CEO role, I've told Max this a million times and the rest of the team, but he was the one. He was the reason why I wanted to get involved with Blossom, right? As a startup, like in these early stages, as they say, it's the people, right? It's the people, it's the team. Um, Anyone can have a great idea, but to have a team in place that can execute. I think Max, Kartik on the tech side, even just to name, like, these two are very, very impressive individuals. So it's, yeah, I feel lucky and blessed to be part of this team. And I think, anybody that looks up what Max is doing, his history, his background, or anyone that's just been following the progress, I don't just say that to gas him up. He's the best CEO I know, and it just impresses me literally each and every day. And like you said, he lets us all operate in our own realms with confidence and trust. And I think what happens there is then you get your own little engines firing up, all the little gears going, and then next thing you got a machine that's just fully up and running.
That's amazing. I think the CEO is really the one, selling that vision and getting people on
Absolutely.
board and excited. And that role cannot be understated, right? You need to have
Oh,
a team that's as committed as you are to making that a reality. And Max, it sounds like you're a fantastic leader, which is amazing. I've no doubt seen that myself as we've worked on this raise together. And I think one of the points you brought up, really, I think is just super pragmatic for trying to run and scale a business is giving all those key decision makers the ability to execute when they need to as well, which I think is important because with how fast you guys are growing, I just imagine that's the approach you have to take, right?
100%. Yeah. It's not easy though. It's
Absolutely.
it's it's a difficult challenge, I think, as an entrepreneur to shift from like a sole contributor mindset,
Yeah.
especially for a lot of entrepreneurs, because I think they're often very high functioning, very perfectionist, and then to trust other people to make decisions that you might disagree with. It's a very difficult transition, and one, I still got a lot to learn there, but the power of it can't be understated, and the fact that I have such an incredible team makes that a heck of a lot easier.
Absolutely. Now, a question I always like to have founders, it's, obviously pretty incredible journeys that you go on with, a startup and growing a company. It's a lot of work. Is there kind of a favorite moment or a defining moment that you've had on that journey so far where you're just, very excited with the outcome or to see things taking off?
Ooh.
For me, no, it's similar to what you mentioned, Max, about the aha moment. I can only speak from my perspective, but it's just been day in and day out. It's just a gradual compounding increase. Maybe it's different from Max's view. Excuse me.
No, I agree. I feel like you almost, from my perspective, we've almost had to consciously like take take steps back to like appreciate how far we've come
Like, yeah.
and like look more backwards and be like, wow, like oh my gosh, like it feels like yesterday that you know we had 1,000 users and Brandon came on board, or we just hit 10,000 users, and these milestones almost come and go like so quickly, and you don't celebrate them. We made a big deal of celebrating and having a party for our 100,000 because that was one where I was like, okay, but this is like really important, and it almost just came and went. We're like, oh, we're
Yeah.
100,000 now. But we threw a party for our community here in Vancouver, and so that was a special moment of reflection. And of course, even this round, right? Like this all, is massive. I think, one of the largest, if not the largest crowdfunding round in Canadian history, or maybe not largest, but most successful, right? From speed to raise the target. But even this, it's a huge milestone, and I think we're going to celebrate actually tomorrow as a team to really reflect on that. But you got to make time for it, because especially if you're like us, you just work right through it, and then you blink, and then I'm sure we're going to blink and we'll have 1 million users tomorrow, right? So
That's the goal.
knock
I
on wood.
love that. It's yeah, so important to celebrate the successes as you get them and to also, if you can, I know typically find some time to unplug as an entrepreneur as well. Brandon, I know you've got a family and Max, I know you're a big Swiftie fan. So what do you guys like to do to unplug when you get a couple downtime moments from work?
Well, it's don't talk about Taylor Swift or Brandon's not a fan. So,
What?
but as Ava grows up, Ava's gonna start listening to Taylor Swift, and then
Not in this household. No, no, no,
she's gonna convert you.
no.
I don't know. I guess on my end, I think like health is really important, and even Brandon, we do founder feedback, and I think you've even noticed like the difference of when even I as a CEO do or don't prioritize health and exercise, like it makes a difference on how I function as a leader, and so I find running is very cathartic for me. I enjoy running a lot, but as far as breaks and unplug. I mean, Scandinavian Spa, we were talking about that in Whistler is one of the best places to do that. There's no talking, no phones.
Yep.
That's one of my favorite places to unplug. And then in the winter time, a good day on the ski hill is also just you can't really be thinking about work when you're going 100 miles down
Very true.
yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Brandon?
Yeah, for me, I guess it's I'd say maybe different than a lot of founders, but one thing I just more or less have to prioritize is the off time for family. You don't want to upset them. If I upset the wife, if the kid's not happy, then that trickles into my work. So surprisingly, when I block off time for family, that makes me more efficient, on my on time while I'm working. So I guess it, I have actually a very structured work schedule, which I think is very, atypical of a founder who's working. Max is working every weekend. I could text him at literally 1 in the morning and he's up on his computer. For me, I need to block off those hours in the evening to spend the time. But it's that structure, I think, provides me personally the peace of mind, and I'm able to get done what I need done during work hours. It's just a very good healthy balance, really.
That's so important for sure. And I hope you guys, take some time and really celebrate as a team tomorrow with the big kind of milestones and historic raise that you had. Those moments are definitely important. And switching gears now to talk a bit more about the raise. I know, Maxwell, you touched on, historic raise, fastest to raise X amount. So I think we knew going in that you guys had an engaged community, but even we were just blown away by how quickly you exceeded the targets. I mean, you had planned to raise 500,000 in 1.5 months. You hit that target in a day. You broke our record for the most investments in a single day and the quickest campaign to successfully close their round at about 3.5 days there. So for you guys, what was it about this form of raising capital, we like to call it community capital, that really just resonated so well with your community? Would love to hear a bit more about that.
Yeah. I mean, I think even before we launched, I was, and actually, I've invested in FrontFundr 8 years ago, right when the equity crowdfunding exemption got approved. And I remember thinking, this is such an interesting way to raise capital. How I was surprised that you actually weren't allowed to invest in private companies unless you were an accredited investor. And then, I thought it was a big step, I think, for Canada to approve that, the crowdfunding exemption. And then, when we were considering it, it's like I couldn't think of a more perfect company to actually raise capital in this way, where we're literally a social network for investors. Community is a huge aspect. Our community, it is essentially, as Brandon mentioned, what is special about the app. They're the ones posting, commenting, engaging, providing, helping each other in the community. And so it didn't feel right that they weren't able to own a piece of it. We constantly got messages, how do I invest in Blossom? I remember when we announced our pre-seed, we had angels invest, and they said, I just invested in Blossom. LOI Venture from Ryan Holmes and Manny Pata, they invested. Anytime we would post these things to celebrate, we'd get like 100 DMs of people, how do I invest? How do I invest? Right. And so it was a really natural fit. And I think, even more natural of a fit, I think, than we could have ever imagined. And, I'm so proud and honored to have, almost 1,000 of our users. If you think about it, that's 1% of all of our users, essentially, who invested, are now investors and shareholders in the platform that they love. So yeah, wow, it's wild. And yeah, it was perfect. It's perfect for us. It's perfect for our mission. It's perfect for our ethos. It was just, yeah, home run across every front.
Absolutely. Definitely a great fit. And I think there are a couple things you guys did really well with the raise. I mean, there are a number of things, but I know some of the ones that really stood out to me were how effectively you guys communicated the target in saying, hey, this is our round. We're allocating X amount to the community. Filled that in a day, then it's okay. We're opening X amount more to the community. I feel like that was really clear, streamlined messaging. But not only that, ahead of launch day, you guys actually did a fantastic job building anticipation for what was coming as well. And I know there were some posts in the platform and other things that you guys were sharing that really helped get people excited. So I would love to hear a little bit more about kind of those strategies and more that really helped drive that campaign success in such a short period of time, which is incredible to see.
100%. Yeah, one of the ones that I'll touch on, which I always talk about, is for many startups, like the importance of building like a newsletter. Like not everyone will have the benefit of like the community that we have, which obviously as a social app is very unique. But for other people, like most products, you have people give their email at some point in the process. And what a lot of people do with that is they just blast out like ads, basically, like buy my product, here's a new feature, here's a new whatever, right? And we took a page actually out of two great companies, Simple's, TLDR newsletter, which some people might read, or even the Peak, and the Peak Money, which sold recently for 6 million. I remember seeing, actually, it was when the Peak sold for 6 million. I think they had what was it, like maybe 100,000 in their newsletter. I was like, well, hey, we have like 30,000 emails. So I was like, well, we could, build something similar, right? If it's worth 6 million, it may as well do that. So yeah, we've grown our newsletter, over 70,000 active subscribers with a 60% open rate. And on the day of launch, since we had built such an engaged following by delivering value, so every week I spend personally like 5 hours of my Saturday writing really deep diving into the market news of the week. I wrote about everything that's going on with TD this week, and just delivering value, not trying to say what's Blossom, whatever, just value, right? And that can be across any different industry. I think that's applicable. And the result on launch day, 2,321 clicks on our email about the campaign, which is yes, about 40,000 opens, and that's a 6% click-through rate. That alone, in addition to, we have great relationships with ambassadors and influencers and everything, which was an important piece of the campaign. But one thing I think anyone can replicate is, if you spend a year really building and engaging that mailing list, and so they actually care about what you're sending them in the email. That can make a massive difference. Brandon, I'm sure you have anything to add, but I'll pause there. But yeah.
Well, not much to add. I was just thinking, maybe not applicable for all types of businesses, but I think one thing that we do very well is on that vein is there's a really strong line of communication. Like when people think of Blossom, they think of Max, right? They think of myself. Like we're very in touch with our users and our end customers. Really, at the end of the day, I think that actually goes a long way when it comes to something like this, where if they feel a personal friendship and they feel a personal care. Again, maybe not possible for all types of businesses, but I think when there is that rapport that's built, from the leadership, from the company to the end customers or users, you think about how effective that would be when it comes to raising capital, or when it comes to essentially asking them to open up their checkbooks to support you, versus like a faceless, company who doesn't, not as in touch. That's more so, I guess, just a way of operating versus a tactic or strategy in terms of promoting it. But I do think that's something that worked very well in our favor as well.
Yeah, it's like a mindset, right? Like, and it's so, well, whenever I talk to other entrepreneurs about this, I always, it's almost hard to bring stuff like that up, because you're right, Brandon. It's not like a
either
tact,
are you aren't.
right?
Either are you.
Like, you need to actually care. Like you need
to
like
and
like an example of this is, and some people might think, I sent an email to every single one of the shareholders, and some people might think that was automated. That was me staying up till 1 a.m., basically pasting, emailing every single one of our shareholders. And I did that because I didn't want it to feel this automated email. I wanted to go through every single one and see the names and see, who are the folks, like what are the names?
We're
Where are the
supporting us. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
like it's no small thing to, yeah, exactly. Like you said, Brandon, go and invest, 500, 1,000, 10,000. Like this is like a lot of money for folks, right? And we appreciate that so deeply. And I think it's really easy in business, like you said, for things just to become numbers or to become, even I even hate calling our users. I always try and say members, because users just feels so like a statistic, or it's like
Yeah.
every single one of our folks, like 100,000 folks, that's 10 times the size of my like small town. It's like incredible amount of folks and individuals and families and people who have goals and dreams, and our app is where they're coming to for their financial information and guidance from other folks in the community, right? And so yeah, we don't take that lightly, and I don't think other entrepreneurs should ever forget that at the end of the day, there's real people who your product or whatever you've built is impacting. And yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so important, both kind of key points there that you brought up. I mean, fundraising of any kind, really trust and transparency is key. And it's not something where you can just kind of build that relationship overnight and expect people to write a check. It's something that definitely needs to be built and nurtured and stuff over time. And I think, a newsletter is definitely a great avenue for that. Connecting with people on more of a personal level is great. Interestingly, with the newsletters, like when we have companies who come to us wanting to raise, we do a bit of like a pre-screen with them to check fit. Like, does this form of fundraising actually make sense to you? And one of the key things that I look for when reviewing that is an email list. Like, how do you acquire those users? How often are you in touch with them? How are you, what kind of engagement do you see? Because we know that that is such an important channel for building community. And that's really, key to success for this form of funding. So I think those are kind of great pieces of advice from you both for future entrepreneurs to really take into consideration when considering doing an equity crowdfunding raise, for sure.
100%. Yeah.
Now, as we kind of look to close things off today, something that I always like to just ask, founders and leadership team members is just if there's like a quote or a piece of advice that you've received along your journey that's really kind of stood out to you or guided you so far.
Oh God. You first, Max, you first.
Oh no, what was the Buffett one? I just
Careful what others are-
yeah, this is more related to investing, but it's the one that comes first to mind, which is yeah, be greedy when others are fearful and be fearful when others are greedy. And to be honest, that actually quote applies very well to Blossom, because there were a lot of social apps for investors back in 2021 that popped up, and then as soon as the bear market hit, a lot of them gave up and shut down. And we were greedy whenever others were fearful, and we continued building, and we pushed through that. And now look at look at where we are. We're entering into over 100,000 users. We're potentially entering, hopefully, into bull market, and even if not, right, like we stood the test of time. And I think yeah, that's a really good one for anything. I think a lot of people chase opportunities when they're hot, and then they give up quickly. And that's not how great businesses are made.
Hard to argue with Warren Buffett. It's pretty great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of mine as well, and it's not as exciting, but I think, like, I read this book, is like, I think it was by something Hardy, I think Dan Hardy or something, The Compounding Effect or The Compound Effect, very popular book. And it applies to investing, as I'm sure any investor knows, the power of compounding over years and years and years. And I remember reading that and thinking of how to apply that to business or to life, really, in anything, health, fitness, but certainly business is, you make these small incremental efforts, day in and day out. And it's crazy how much impact that can have over time. So a lot of business people, founders would know that, but it's just crazy now, like you said, Max, you reflect like 2 years later and you look at, those effects, right? It's, you see too many, like, especially probably founders who are starting out, or they have these big ideas, and, you give a little effort here and they take a break and then you go big, It's versus you see the consistency of a team that's, just day in and day out doing a little bit better, each day, 1%, whatever it is,
Yeah.
how that impacts again, not just business, but any aspect of life as well. And certainly investing. That's,
Yeah.
yeah, that
It's
too.
so obvious with investing, but you're right. Like it's so, yeah, that applies to everything. And I think especially with newer entrepreneurs, all of the get rich quick, all of,
Yeah.
all of those, it's not how you build good business. It's not how you build wealth. Like, yeah, really important lesson, I think, Brandon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great principle to apply across all aspects of life, like you said. So, yeah, really appreciate you guys sharing that. Last question I have for today. I know the round is closed. I know you guys have already opened up a waiting list for people who wished they could have invested and didn't have the opportunity. So, would love to know if there's a way that interested people can pre-register for the next round. And for those who are just interested, where can they find, download, and get started with Blossom as well?
100%. Well, I don't know if you guys can put links or whatever on these, but we can share you that link. It's a Google form link, so I can't read it out. But yeah, we have almost 300 people on the wait list already, which is amazing. Definitely come check out and join the community. The best way to stay in touch and stay in the loop about future investment opportunities, etc., would be by joining Blossom and downloading us on the App Store or Google Play. But also, not just for investment opportunity in the company, but also, if you're interested in private investments, you're almost certainly also investing in the public market. So our app is probably perfect for you as well. But yeah, incredible, and big shout out to FrontFundr for facilitating this and for making this possible, and for all of your leadership in the equity crowdfunding space here in Canada.
I appreciate that very much. I, like you said, cannot think of a company that was a better fit for equity crowdfunding. It was just amazing to see, and you guys did a fantastic job promoting the raise. And Maxwell, I think you said it well. You were working hard every day to individually reach out to investors, and that's so important too, and cannot be understated, how much value that adds to the raise as well. So really appreciate your guys' efforts in making it such a great campaign. And it's definitely a pleasure working with you both. So really appreciate, having a chance to learn more about the business, about yourselves, and to take the time to chat with you both more today as well.
Amazing. Thanks, Trias.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. For anyone new to the podcast, FrontFundr is Canada's leading equity crowdfunding platform, enabling all Canadians to invest in the most exciting startups and growth stage companies, something that was previously only available to the 1%. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter so you can have your questions answered in an upcoming episode. This podcast episode is for informational purposes only and should not constitute financial advice. Investors should conduct their own due diligence on any investment they may be considering on FrontFundr. For details of any offering listed on FrontFundr, refer to the offering document on their campaign page at www.frontfundr.com.